Joining us now is former Michigan Republican Congressman Fred Upton. Congressman, it's very good to see you. This is a whole new environment. You were known for working across the aisle, famously, of course, with your good friend John Dingell, the Democratic chairman. But how do the Democrats, how do the Republicans, the moderates, so-called moderates, how do they operate in this environment?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, we'll see how this all plays out. The rules package, which is always usually the first day that a Congress is in session, is always partisan. When the Democrats are in charge, every Republican votes no, and vice versa, which is pretty much what happened yesterday. But I think the real thing to look for now in the days ahead is particularly the Rules Committee. Now, most Americans don't know about the Rules Committee. You don't learn that in high school or college civics, but every bill of any consequence, once it gets through a committee, goes to the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee then decides how much debate it's going to have, what amendments, what's the sequence, what's the motion to recommit, or whatever that is to most Americans. And now that committee has been expanded, the Freedom Caucus asked for 3 members on that committee. It's always 9-4 majority, so Republicans will have 9, the Democrats will have 4. But one of the frustrations that I think that a lot of members, particularly on the Republican side, have had is that they want amendments that are germane to whatever that bill is that comes out of energy and commerce or appropriations or whatever. I mean, I can remember when I was first elected back in the late 80s, that you'd have an appropriation bill up on the House floor, and it would be up all week long. There would be amendments all week long offered by Republicans and Democrats that were germane to the bill. If you increase spending, if you had an amendment to increase spending, you'd have to have an offset to reduce it so that it was within those budget caps. And now the frustration, of course, that Republicans have had the last number of years is you end up with this 4,000-page continuing resolution that no one can even offer an amendment to do this or that to it, and that's got to change. And I think that'll be the big issue. And of course, we know that the margin is only a handful. So 4 or 5 Republicans join, if it's not a fair rule, if you don't get some amendments that might change the course of that bill, 4 or 5 moderate Republicans, I might say, we're not going to vote for that rule because it doesn't allow for an amendment to do this or that. And so that'll be the real change, I think, as you look forward. How is Tom Cole, who's tremendously respected on both sides of the aisle, and he'll be the chairman of the Rules Committee, how is he going to fashion those new members to make sure that, in fact, when those bills reach the floor, that, there's maybe an equal number of fair Democrat as well as Republican amendments to maybe shape it a little different than how it came out of committee.
Isn't this the recipe for gridlock? I mean, there were legitimate arguments that they should have had more say over things and they shouldn't be handed a 4,000-page bill and have to vote on it in 24 hours. But don't you have gridlock? It
really could. I mean, we'll see how this plays out. It could mean real gridlock down the road for sure. As an example, you got 12 different appropriation bills. One's agriculture, one's labor aid, one's foreign aid, et cetera. The House could take all those up under Kay Granger, the new chairwoman of appropriations. The House could take all of those up, but if the Senate says, and last year they didn't. I don't think the Senate took up a single appropriation bill, so that's why we ended up with this big omnibus bill at the very end. But at the end of the day, that fiscal year is creeping ever so closer, September 30th. And so the House can do its work, but if the Senate doesn't do any, then you end up with an omnibus. And of course, the new rule is, and I think it's actually a good one, you got to have 72 hours to look through it. But hopefully there'll be an amendment process. And, the democratic process in the Congress will be one that's really reflective of what we all thought was going to happen when we were back in college. A democracy.
And the debt ceiling will be the real collision, which will affect all of us.
But a quick question.
Senator Stabenow surprised decision not to seek re-election has created a lot of turmoil in Michigan politics. Would you consider running for the Senate?
Well, despite still getting carded when I go see a Cubs game, I'm 69 years old, and I'd have to pledge, I think, to serve at least 2 terms. I don't look to be serving in the Congress when I'm in my mid-80s, so probably not a candidate for U.S. Senate in Michigan.
You're not ruling it out.
Well, I'm glad to be out of the Congress this last week. I haven't thought about my future quite yet, but it's I guess you could say I've not ruled it out, but I'm really probably most inclined not to do so.
We'll touch base with you when you get closer to a decision. Fred Upton, it's very good to see you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Andrea.